So this is a solo show, obviously. There's no scenario today. It's just me, Alan Orion Mackey, lead designer of Lord of the Rings Online. We're going to be discussing today, or I'm going to be discussing today, some changes that are upcoming to Monster Play and answering any questions that you may have about that or the game in general. Just a couple of notes that are going to go out there initially, and that's one, we are currently working on finalizing the last pieces of the next letter to the players. It will either go up tomorrow or sometime early next week. So be on the lookout for that. We're hoping to have that out as soon as we possibly can. The next thing is we don't have the final date for Update 45. We're in the fourth round of Bull Roars this week. We'll be very likely having another one next week as well. And we're hoping that sometime before the end of July we'll be able to get U45 out the door. So that's all the stuff that's in the very near term, things that we're looking at, things that we're hoping to get out there, and we're really excited about everything that we've got inside of it. So we're really kind of in the middle of things now, and we're really enjoying like where we're at, and we hope that you are too. So what do we want to talk about today? We want to talk about some of the changes that are coming to Monster Play. We want to talk about some of the history of Monster Play. We want to talk about some of the things that have been brought up on Discord recently about why we can't do certain aspects of Monster Play. Because of like where it started, where it's been, how it's gone all along, and basically the difficulties that we have in being able to maintain the Ettenmoors as what it is. Because we know that one of the things that has continued to be a difficulty is the lag that still exists out in the Ettenmoors. So we want to highlight that, and we want to actually get into a little more discussion on it to explain like where we're at, what's happening, what we've been able to do, and where we're actually planning on going moving forward. So to start with, let's just give a quick overview of things that are coming to the Update 45 version of the Ettenmoors. So the Ettenmoors is going through a significant amount of change. We're starting to add, we've finally been able to add, I should say, the siege mechanic that we've been trying to get in for the past year and a half, almost 2 years now, or a little over a year now. The idea comes from the very fact that we have to figure out a way to start spreading out the players in a more advantageous way to keep you from kind of consolidating and fighting against one another, because the engine, the age of the engine, the way that the game works, the size of the characters, and a lot of other interesting tidbits and problems that have arisen over the years, and just how the game has changed over time are beginning to weigh things down. And it's not as simple as, pinning was a step. Pinning worked for aspects of it. Then we had some issues when we shifted over to the 64-bit servers, where we ended up with a lot of cross-boundary, cross-server issues where entities were getting lost and then getting found again and getting locked into positions that we didn't want them to. So we had to make some adjustments there. And what we've been able to do is fix a lot of that. What we were able to do initially was fix a lot of that by reorganizing the way the pinning was working. What we're seeing now is that the pinning is no longer doing what we expected it to do with how we have it formulated. We've actually put everything onto the center block, which was for the right reasons, because the more of you who were playing, and we're seeing an uptick in those of you who are playing Monster Play, what we were seeing is that if we could keep everyone kind of located on one central server, it was better for overall performance. But what has now ended up happening is, because there are more numbers in there more often, and all of the other issues that were actually plaguing us along the way that we needed to put that in there, we basically ended up in a situation where we need now to go back and look at pinning again. So we're in the process of determining exactly where that needs to shift, and I hope you can all hear me better. I turned up the gain on the mic. So what we're planning on doing now is reorganizing the way that the pinning is working and putting it back to the way that it was before the changes that we made after the shift to 64-bit servers. That basically means that we should be seeing a better overall performance across the entirety of the Ettenmoors. There still may be some points where there are significant lag bits, where there may be some entities that get lost on the landscape. There are some strange things built out in the Ettenmoors that cause a lot of those problems to happen that we don't have easy solutions for. But the overall goal for what we're doing here is to spread you out further, to move you into different areas and give you better objectives and reasons to move away from the main thoroughfare of Lugazag, Tolascarnan, and Tirith Ra. Over the past probably 4 to 6 months, we've actually seen a shift away from the traditional camp at Glainvrag and camp at Gramsfoot. It isn't gone by any stretch of the imagination, but it's been a little bit better. Part of that is very likely related to the fact that the initial server performance with the 64 bits and the pinning and everything that actually had happened in the earlier iterations was able to sustain more of the fights across the world. And there was a lot more in the base game for players to actually take advantage of. So I think that was part of it. That made things a little bit more flexible and deterministic in the way that you start to fight over the central portions again. And what ended up happening, or what has ended up happening over that time now, is you're fighting in much larger groups. And what we've been seeing is a very consistent number of players on the higher population servers of Orcrist and Glamdring, even Meriadoc, and sometimes Peregrine, although Peregrine is still behind in terms of the monster play experience on that particular server. But Orcrist and Glamdring are really are really kind of hopping, right? So we're seeing a lot of that. Could we share the pinning map? We could probably put together the pinning map. The issue is that right now it's really hard to show you without going in and showing you the exact location of the land block overlays and how it actually corresponds to where it is on the map. We only have one that's kind of internal at this point, and we haven't redrawn everything yet. So giving it to you right now isn't going to help. But part of the reasons that we shifted, like say the elf camp, from the location where it was on the western side of the little pathway there to the eastern side in the most recent updates, is because it was on 4 land blocks. It was cut through directly between 4 different land blocks for that one little thing. And a land block is a way that we actually do separate the different aspects of the world, and it's how we seed things and so on and so forth. And what ends up happening is when you're fighting on those lines, and the way that the pinning was all set up, and the way that old server boundaries existed, was one of the most highly trafficked areas in the game. And because you were constantly shifting over both land blocks and server boundaries, you had to serialize your character, move from one to another, back and forth. So the more often that you were sliding back and forth over those land block boundaries and the server boundaries, the more you are actually shifting back and forth over servers, and it actually does create a significant amount of lag when you're moving characters over that consistently. And what ended up happening was it basically ties the servers up to a point where they aren't able to keep up with what's happening. So we move that over so that it's a little bit less restrictive and a little bit freer for where people can actually be. It should specifically help that the elf camp area, and that's about it. Yes, land block lines are different than server pinning lines. No, it's not. Raids aren't really so I'm just reading questions from directly in the chats. Raids are a problem. The reason that raids are a problem is a little different than the serialization of the player characters as they move over server boundaries. Server boundaries and land block boundaries, let's go back to that question from Snow. Are they different? Yes. Land blocks are different than server boundaries. The way that the architecture of our game works is a land block, when it is loaded, will load a number of surrounding land blocks near it. Which means that it will look at, say, Tolascarnan, we'll just use that as a great example. If you step onto the island portion of Talis Garnen, then all the way around, for the waterway around it, up to the cliff, and out to the orc camp, but not quite the elf camp, will be loaded on that server or on your client. So your client can actually see that, and then most everything else is built out so you can just see the far view portions of what's there. So what you'll actually end up seeing, or what your client knows about, is everything in that area. That's your land block. A server is maintaining every land block that is tied to it. So with pinning, we were able to take all of the different land blocks and tie them to one particular server, and then keep that loaded in the server memory, but not the client memory, if that makes any sense. Right? There is a slight difference between them. So that's kind of what we've been done. With Moore's lag in mind and reducing NPCs, etc., what would be the performance cost for additional entities coming with Siege? So there is a reduction in the overall entities that are out there with the addition of Siege. And to be clear, what Siege is meant to do is not overwhelm with more entities. We've been very careful to back off the initial idea of what we wanted to do by adding in catapults and adding in the ability to have multiple different ballista positioned on the different locations and giving you technical hard points where you were going to be able to build these things. And this is, and again, I want to be very clear, it's an iterative step. This is a step that we are taking. There's more iteration that we'd like to work on over time. This is kind of the first one. The initial idea where we had the hotspots where you could place the different things was not going to be fun. It was not going to function the way that we wanted to. It was ugly. It didn't really make a lot of sense. It was difficult to perceive how that was going to really bring some kind of a benefit to the overall battle in the space. And on top of that, the notion goes back to the original implementation of the Ettenmoors. We did at one point in time, probably around 2008, have backdoors into the keeps and ways that you could get in, and they ended up being a very contentious aspect of the game. We've always wanted to have doors that were there, that made it you had to breach them in order to take over the locations, but we haven't had an opportunity really, or I don't want to say an opportunity, it's more been the time. And in the interim years where the team became small enough and contracted enough that there wasn't anyone capable of going in and making adjustments to the Ettenmoors, a lot of the ideas kind of fell by the wayside. When I returned 3 years ago, I still had all these things in my head. They were all things that I've wanted to do. So a lot of that is still like incumbent upon the fact that I really enjoy it, and I really want to continue growing the Ettenmoors and continuing to change the experience and to make it a little bit more like a true battlefield, right? You make it more like a battlefield, like a living battlefield. So the idea of Siege was not just to put in siege machines and to put gates in. It was to change the way that the battlefield works by putting in more objectives that need to be taken care of or need to be looked at any given time to spread the population. Excuse me. To spread the population, to give you multiple things that you can actually go after. No, I don't have COVID. I had cancer a few years ago, and this is actually just damage from the cancer that I have a persistent cough that doesn't ever go away. But I'm fine. I'm fine now. So the changes that we're making now are to provide you with a number of different objectives that are important to you while you're continuously going through the Ettenmoors, with the idea that these are all iterative steps. The overall goal is to put in more and more and get back to the point where the Delving of Frore is viable again. Now, when I say viable again, On MM and I are currently working on coming up with a way to do what we've wanted to do for a bit, and that's extend the player gear that you can get inside of the Etten Wars. And to also make it so that there's another way for the monster players to move towards something and start leveling up without it being overly grindy. So these are things that we are slowly working toward. And we've been trying to come up with the right answers for the incentivization. And part of the problem that exists is Monster Play was created way back in the day as a quick way for you to get involved in the game. When I say a quick way for you to get involved in the game, it was always meant that you could play a monster at lower levels, and then you would take a while to level up your main character and get in there. And initially, there was a secondary aspect of it with the Destiny Point system that gave you incremental moments of advancement and buffs that you could purchase by participating in Monster Play as a monster player, that you could then benefit your player characters on the other side. Sometime around 2012, that kind of fell away, right? So we've been kind of working back toward that. And last year, the introduction of the reward track was part of the return to that method of thinking, or that line of thinking. And what we've done now is we've actually created five seasons of reward tracks that are going to be available. So starting with update 45, the second season will begin. It's the season of the Nemesis. Then there'll be another season after that. We've got seasons basically that will take us into the new year, at which point we're probably going to extend the season out even further. This one will be a little bit longer. We've addressed some of the issues that existed with the first one, where this will take you a little bit longer to advance. But we've put in more ways for you to actually advance that too, because now all of the quests in the Etten Wars are going to contribute to the reward track as a monster player. The way that the itemization breakdown is working is at every 6th level, there's 50 levels in the track, and then you repeat after that. At the 6th level, you can choose a cosmetic item. At the 10th level, you get to choose a cosmetic appearance, and then that repeats all the way up to level 49, at which point I think you get your last, I believe that's where you get your, 48 is where you get your last cosmetic choice. You get your title at 49, and then you get the frame, which is the seasonal frame, at 50. The seasonal frames are always going to be the chaser goal for the end of the reward track, and they're the big thing that you get to show that you were part of that particular reward track. And that will be the formula as we move forward. So it's something that we've been working on, trying to get ahead of, and give us the time to actually implement them and have them carry forward. So it's there now. We've got it. It's going to actually work for the next at least 5 months as we get into the new year. And I think it carries us through the beginning of the 2026 campaign. So that is something that we're really excited about introducing too. So with Siege, what we wanted to do was reintroduce the notion that you could take and hold a location. That's why we've implemented the gates that are now available at Tirith Ra and Lugazag. You can now build gates to stop players from stopping either the monster players or the players from getting in. Then you can construct up to, it's going to be difficult to do this because you have to space them out correctly, but you can pretty much build up to 4 ballista if you are controlling the location. And you can build battering rams if you're not holding the location to try to break down the different gates that have been built up. And just because this is going to be a discussion about PvMP, I'll also be touching on other things as we move forward too, because there's more than 40 and 45 than just Monster Play. But what we're planning on doing here is when you take a tower, if you also control the lumber yard, you can build a gate. Building the gate will give you a very strong structure that players cannot break down on their own, or monster players cannot break down on their own. They have to bring in a battering ram in order to do so. The battering rams are the only thing that will deal damage to the doors, or the gates rather. And the defenders can take their time to build up the gates. The gates will also have a reinforcement quest that's available that when those are turned in up to 5 times, increase the overall strength of the gate. So the gates can become very, very powerful. And the way that it's built out is if you turn in one of those quests when you are under siege, you will restore the gate to its full capacity and increase the overall damage that it can sustain. That means that you can have the battle kind of repair along the way and get to the point where you can sustain until you can get defenses in. Now, when I said back doors, I mean exactly that. The old new elf camp, so the forward camps that were put in sometime around 2012, have been repurposed. The first one near Tirith Ra was the old new orc camp. We're just going to call it the orc forward camp. And then the one outside of Lugazag, which is the elf forward camp, are now controllable locations. When you control them, you gain access into what we're calling the underseats. The underseats is a replica of a tunnel that's been dug immediately under the landscape of the Ettenmoors that takes you from one location on one side of the Ettenmoors to the other side of the Ettenmoors. We did make the decision based off of your feedback to allow mounts inside of that space and to allow march inside of that space, so you'll be able to move through that rather quickly. There is also 2 new relics that have been placed inside of that location, and this is more of a proof of concept than anything. The proof of concept here is to prove out the tech that I put in that enables us to work a more fluid version of Capture the Flag. So the idea with this is you'll be able to, as a player or a monster player, capture one of the new relics that are put inside of the underseats, take them into an area within the underseas called the Horfall, and inside of that space you'll be able to slaughter one another and gain a benefit of damage, glory urn, infamy urn, that will enable you to then more easily run through and deal damage to the enemy inside of anywhere across the Ettenmoors for a period of time after you've cleansed the relic. That is one way that we're trying to spread you out. And really what the underseats is a cut through to enable you to use one area of the map to go through and sneak into the enemy tower or sneak into the tower that you control without having to use the front gates. So it's a more extensive way of creating the back door that can then be defended inside of the dungeon space or outside of the dungeon space, and you have to take control of it in order to be able to get into it in the first place. We've also added in the 2 new heroes, one in Grotham and one in Horhallow, that enable you to get a benefit while they are alive. When they are killed, the strength of your different outposts is reduced. The outposts themselves, the strength of the different hold locations you have, that being Tirith Ra, Lugazag, or Tolascarnan, are stronger. When they're dead, you get weaker. The outposts have also been set up so when they flip, and they'll be flipping faster, they'll be flipping every 60 minutes now, to have vendors inside of them that you can use your hard-earned Marta, which is the new monster play currency, to purchase buffs that are only available inside of the Ettenmoors that will also disappear when you leave the Ettenmoors. They share their potency with the store buffs. They can only be used in the Ettenmoors, though. You can also purchase some Tomes of Defense there for Mithril. You can also use commendations to get this benefit too. At the Towers of Lugazag and Tolascarnan, when you take control of them as a monster player, you're going to get a key. When you take control of them as a player, you'll get a key. If you hold those locations for an hour, there will be a chest that appears, and that chest can then be opened with the key to gain a lot of an extra bonus of commendations and more of the new monster play currency for both the player and the monster player side. This is all meant to hopefully spread you out and give you more things that you can do. Now, one of the other things that we're working on in the background, obviously, you got to see a little bit of it in the last round of Bull Roar testing last week, and that was the Angmar and Sorceress. So one of the things that we just wanted to show is that we have continued work on that, and the Sorceress is now in a state where when you switch all of your stances, you now have the ability to train up your Sorceress studies. These will now transition the skills directly into the skill bar, not opening up a secondary skill bar. You'll be able to still maintain a number of these skills as you want, up to 3. And you still have the ability to focus on Frost, Fire, Shadow, and Acid. And each of these is now, maintained on your character as you're looking for. So these are things that we've been working on, that we're continuing to work on. The Sorceress is not ready yet. We will be bringing her back at some point over the summer, probably later in the summer, because we do want to continue showing off like what we've been doing for her and what we're planning on doing in the future, and making sure that we get some more testing on her, because we know that we really want to make sure that this is in really great shape before we actually release her to the general game world. So that is the quick high-level overview of the changes that are coming to Monster Play. Now, there are plenty of other questions in here that I want to take a look at. So people have been asking, are there any plans to extend slots in the player houses, like additional slots for tables, food, or plates? So that's an interesting question. One of the things that we have been looking at in the housing system is how to better make things look more lived in. And I can tell you that one of the big things that we're looking forward to introducing in the near term and then the long term are more structured and complete housing sets. Some of those are going to be like full-on kitchens, full-on bedrooms, things like that. You'll start seeing those at some point in the not-so-distant future. I wouldn't say that they're right around the corner, but you'll see more of those as we continue to build them out. Let's see. I want to go back up and look if there's any more. And if any of the moderators have like questions that they want to bring out to me, please do, so that I can see them. There's a question from Mary Alice. How is pinning different from the block allocation regions that you guys define? That is more of a deep technical question that I'm not really capable of answering. Our block allocation is a little bit more engineer specific, and it's not something I really can give a lot of structured answer to, so I'm just going to dodge that one and be honest that I'm dodging it. What will be new regions to visit in Lotro? We aren't yet talking about anything coming in the expansion later on in the year, but the letter to the players will have a bit of a tease in what's coming up. Are there any plans to... that was the one about the slots. No, there wasn't anything besides PvMP answered yet, because I was focusing mostly on PvP today. But that's totally fine. Monster Play Vaults. That is a really good question. So, monster players are not the same as regular players. Anyone who was on the Bull Roar test server probably noticed when we turned the when we turned the Sorceress on, that if you already had, say, 7 monster players somehow because you transferred an extra one in, you weren't able to create a Sorceress. That's because currently there is a limit on how many of those characters can actually be created. We have to come up with a solution to that before we can actually release the Sorceress. We don't know exactly what that answer is going to be at this point, but we are working on it so that we can get the Sorceress out the door and get her ready for play and inclusion in the game. But monster players don't have the same exact ability that a player has. They're not a real character for all intents and purposes. Your player characters are much larger, are stored in a completely different way, and really your monster characters kind of live alongside your main characters. It's really weird. But when we initially dreamed up the idea for monster play 18 odd years ago, 19 odd years ago, God, it was a long time. The idea was that they were going to be coin up, and that you would have to earn destiny in order to play them, and you can only play them for a short period of time in different areas of the world. But some of us, mainly me, pushed really hard to make sure that they became a character that you could advance and you could build, and that you would continue to work with over time. And a lot of the underlying and deeper systems that are tied to main characters just do not exist for monster players. And that'll bring me to one of the discussion points that continues to come up with, why can't you just instance out the Ettenmoors? Or why can't you lair the Ettenmoors in the same way that other areas like Bree are layered, or Breland is layered, where you can separate the world population? The reason we can't do that is because we don't have the ability to actually take our monster players currently and teleport them into an instant space. They cannot be instanced. They exist only in that place and time that they have been created, which is the Ettenmoors. It is a foundational issue with the way that we implemented them, that they are, for all intents and purposes, a session character, like session play, like chickens, or when you go into any of the epic story bits where you see things that happened in the past. A lot of those sessions are built directly into the instance that you're in. So for monster play, when we created it, instead of building it so they could go into instances, we built it so that they could go into a territory. And that territory is the Ettenmoors. We were able to expand that when Osgiliath was built, so they could also go into the Osgiliath territory. But you can only teleport inside of the general game world, not an instance version of the game world. And that is a current limitation that we have. It's one that we would like to change, and one that, frankly, if we had had at the beginning, the towers, Tirith Ra and Tolascarnan, and the lumber camp, and all of the different take and hold locations would have been built out a little bit differently. They would have probably been locations that you had to go in and take over, and then they would be locked down for a period of time because they would be instance places where you would have to fight over and control the instance, and then that would control or influence the Ettenmoors around it. But that's not something we're doing anytime in the near term, or even the long term. It's just something that is the way we built it initially. Let's see. Can you guys run any kind of tool to convert all housing items to a compound? I think I understand where you're going with this. Could we make things a compound? Yes, but that's not always the right. That's not always the right answer for what we're trying to do. And the changes that you're asking for would be really, I don't want to say difficult, but would have a large impact on the way that things are handled right now. Considering most of your characters can share the housing that you're in, the benefit may not be as great as you think, unless there was something specific that you were looking for. Ballpark ETA on the letter is either tomorrow or sometime early next week, is what I've been told by Court of Honor. Will the skill panels be updated for the skill panels? Udalin, can you kind of expand on like what your question is with the skill panels? And then I can probably answer it a little bit more clearly. Can we get some more info on the legendary service, particularly the Angmar level caps and the ITA updates? We are planning on bumping the level caps soon-ish. It will not be long after U45 goes live. After update 45 goes live, there is a plan in place to increase the level cap. But right now, what we're seeing from you, the player base, is that there is a desire to stay at this level a little bit longer, because some of you are still getting through the endgame content, and was tuned a little bit further than you expected, and it's a little harder than you had wanted. So there is a question of exactly when that will happen, but it won't be too long after U45 goes live. Good question from Snowlock on what are your thoughts on the Killing Blow system, the rating system, and them feeling kind of superfluous at this point. So this is something that actually just came up. I shouldn't say came up. This is something that we've been looking at and working on for quite some time. I need to put this together for the final release notes, but we are making changes to the way that Glory and Infamy is actually gained. Sorry, Glory and Infamy is gained across the Eden Moors. The deeper and deeper we dig into the formulas that were used or are used inside of the game and were adjusted back in 2012, the more we realize that that was broken in a way that we really needed to take some time to fix. What we discovered, and this is difficult to admit, is that a lot of our diminishing returns were not working the way that we expected. So if you say kill a player inside of the Eden Moors, it's supposed to put a reduction on how much that player is worth from a rating standpoint, and then a reward standpoint when they are killed again. The time on that is an extraordinarily short amount of time. So if they are resurrected and killed again, it is pretty much they're back to being a full value at that point, which is not what you really want to see. Excuse me. So we're making adjustments to that. So the ratings on someone who has been killed recently will go, I shouldn't even say that. The value, the infamy value or glory value of a character that has been recently defeated will be going down. We're also going to be reducing the overall value of players who are killed by large groups of other players. So this is another thing that's difficult to actually explain and to have to say, but what we discovered is that the caps that were put in place did not take into account, and we only discovered this by doing a very deep dive on the way that things were done, did not take into account when there were multiple raids or multiple groups that were contributing to a kill on a single character, which would mean that you would tip the value over by how many people actually contribute to a kill to give you more infamy or renown than you really should have gotten for a kill on a particular character. So that is also being adjusted. The sweet spot that we're shooting for now is about 6 players in a group will have the best return on battle against one another. So that smaller teams is really what we're going at for the overall high point for giving you a bigger amount of infamy and renown. We're trying to pull that back from the large groups because in a large group it becomes far too easy. It's a lot easier for the way that it has been working for someone who's just tagging along with that group to sneak in one hit and get a full value kill, full value on a kill. So we're trying to drive things into smaller confrontations and smaller battles. For the very same reasons that I said at the outset of the stream, right, where we know that large battles can devolve quickly into skills not firing the way that they're supposed to, so on and so forth. So we're working on that. Let's see. Any way to nerf the arcade stones in the Moors? We're looking at them. One of the biggest things with the inclusion of the Sorceress is that she is meant to be the gap closer that has existed between the monster player classes and the player classes in the utility aspect. In the initial draft that you saw last week, there was a lot of questions about the fact that there were There were a number of skills that she had, or a number of effects that she had, that focused mostly on physical damage. And one of the things that we've changed recently is her acid stance is more the physical damage. Her shadow stance will be mostly tactical debuff. Her frost stance will be more of the survivability, CC, and self buff skills. And fire is going to be mostly her flat out damage with some group utility. Are there any thoughts or coffee talks about an Iron Man or even hardcore mode, such as other popular MMOs are doing? There always are. It's one of those things that comes up with potential legendary servers at some point in the future. What are your ideas on extra world bosses like Grodris and the Ettenmoors? Well, Grodris is changing the way that she's going to currently work. She'll be going down to into an hour, so that she'll be there every hour on the hour to make things a little bit better. There is a prevailing thought that we would like to put more out there. There's actually, I have a spec written for Rotten Root appearing out in the Ettenmoors, and a whole raid fight that's built around it. No, it's not centered in the arena that was built, but there are notions to bring more of them out there. I actually have plans for Thorlwy and I forget the other Gwyffithor, the other white that's down there too, to become roaming threats that can actually potentially pop up across the Ettenmoors. And to be honest, like, there was a point when I initially came back that I had wanted to take Gary and put him into Taliskarnen and have him just take over the whole place. That's not anything that's happening in the near future. Those are all things that are still pie in the sky, things that we would like to do at some point, or that we've considered doing at some point, and who knows if we'll ever get around to getting them done. The real goal probably for the next year is to get you back into the Delving of Frore and to have it make sense, so that we return to the deep at some point and let you get down there and have there be rewards that are commensurate to the difficulty that you'd face when you're inside of that space. All right, let's see. Moving further. Your presumed birding was implemented. Yeah, no. So basically, our entire game runs on our proprietary tool and proprietary language. Yeah, we did get an engineer back who had worked on the game, and particularly who had worked on the hobby system back in the past. And when he came back, it just gave us an even greater and better opportunity for us to put in the birding experience, which is, yeah, is there a connection? Yeah, there's a direct connection to that. Like, he knew the system, was excited about doing something, and we were excited about putting in a hobby, and that just happened to be the one that we were able to get in that time frame. And we've been able to expand on it since. And we're really sad that we weren't able to get the fishing update in, but we wanted to do it right. And there's a bit on it in the letter to the players. I don't want to take any of the thunder away from that, so I'm going to not say too much on it. But as we get closer to when the fishing update will go in, we'll give you a full explanation on what's going to be happening there and what that new addition to the fishing portion of the hobby will likely turn into for another hobby sometime in the near future. Sorry, sometime in the future. I don't want to say near future. Yes, Hunter and Burglar updates from Grot Maggot will be in the update coming for update 45. It's not just Siege. The Hunter update, the Burglar update, the extension of birding. It's not just a monster play update. There's a lot that's going on in other different areas of the world too. Have we considered a different type of monster play, like an arena style in Sword Halls, where monsters would fight free people, but not with our existing characters, but using fresh, unladen, small footprint characters? Or will the instances themselves add more lag? Okay, that is an interesting question. If we were to do something like that, we wouldn't do them as... It would basically be a session player on session player experience. There is a prototype that exists right now that we have not had the opportunity to get around to. I'm sure that if you have followed me for a while or ever heard me speak about it, there was a point in time where we were building a more complete PvP experience for the game about 2013, 2014, around the same time that Rohan was going on, that pulled most of us who had originally worked on, actually it was probably 2012, but most of us who had originally worked on Monster Play were moved over to that to kind of focus on this new PvP thing. There are two areas, well, really only one, but there's two areas of the world that were built out. One is a special area inside of Moria that we do still have access to, and that's actually where the prototype is built. The problem is, again, I can't teleport a monster player into that space. And unless we turn that into a true session play experience on session play experience, it wouldn't be something that we could easily take care of or easily do. So while it's an interesting idea, it's not something that we'd really be able to push out the door and get things more balanced for what we really want to do. I mean, we could completely balance that so that each side was equal, but the rewards on it and whatnot, like there'd be no direct way for us to do the rewards that you really be looking for in a situation like that. I will say that I have a crazy idea for Osgiliath that I'm kind of probably going to start working on in the background, that could potentially bring it back at some point, but in a way that you would never expect Osgiliath to be. Arabini has a few questions. Class C work is a controversial topic, but do you plan to update Blue Captain? Not at the current time, no. Blue Lore Master, lacking tools to compete with Red Captain, Blue Mariner. Not every class is going to have an exact copy or homogenized way to compete with any other class. There's a reason why these things have been changed over time, and it's so we have a spread of characters who can be used in different situations. So no, there are no direct plans to make updates to Blue Captain or Blue Lore Master to give them the same utility as another class. When can you expect an update to Hobbit avatars, and will they look like river hobbits? So when, I don't know when it's going to happen, but when the hobbits are updated, they will not be given the same treatment as the river hobbit because they are completely separate rigs, so they would need a completely separate aspect. What is the chance to see more crafting events relatively soon? It depends on what our schedule looks like for the next period of time. So we are planning on, obviously, U45 going out relatively soon. The expansion is definitely due for later this year. We are planning on an early update in 2026 that will again focus on more quality of life updates and some things that are more desirable and more, I don't want to say fun, but kind of like fun for us to implement, and things that we've really wanted to address for a long period of time. So that's something that we'll start talking about a little bit more as we get closer to the end of the year, and certainly as we set up the letter to the players for 2026 and beyond. Mounted combat. Do we have any plans to change steeds or mounted steeds? Not at the current time. One of the things that we are looking at with regard to the legendary servers is Rohan in specific, because Rohan is a point where we started to break away from the formula that originally made Lotro, I don't want to say more successful, but made Lotro kind of what Lotro was. The addition of mounted combat, and then the later addition of big battles, and these other things that have kind of been lost by the wayside, or have been neglected over the years, or however you would like us to put it, are things that we want to try to stay away from moving forward. We're trying to get back to the point where we put in sustainable and extensible experiences for you, and things that are easy enough for us to maintain and continue forward. And I think that's one of the things that we're really looking at and trying to continue to work on as we continue development on the game. We're heading into we're in our 19th year. We're heading toward our 20th year. 20th anniversary for these games is monumental, really, when you think about it, that a game can survive for that long and still have a player base like you that enjoys the game. And for us to continue working on it is something really special, and we want to make sure that we are looking at that and building out more in the future. Does that mean we'll never go back and revisit mounted combat? No, but it's not one of the things that's really a high priority for us. It's one of those things that we look at whenever we see the legendary servers, and they're starting to approach that as we know there's a pain point there. We need to come up with a solution around it, and we likely will have a solution for the Angmar and Mordor experience, where we will find a way to get you through that a little bit faster, so that you can not spend as much time there as you have in the past. I hope that makes sense. Are the store buffs for Mithril at Barters in the Outpost intended? Yes, those are intended. You can use those, or you can use the Marta, or you can use Commendations to get those buffs that are out there. We're trying to make them more accessible to everyone. All right. If the Delving comes back, how are Grodris and Rottenroot going to operate? Will they go back to the Delving? They'll likely be replaced in some way for something to replace them. I've never been a huge fan of the way that Rottenroot was built out. I didn't like the room, and it's just kind of weird. So we're probably going to come up with something different for that. But there will be something that replaces them down there. Not Redcoat. Gee, I wonder who you are. It says, I'd love crafting gear upgrade reasons to re-enter DOF. Yeah, no, we would too. It's kind of the idea that we have and why we are putting in the relic system inside of the underseats that can give you an understanding of what our ideas may be for when we reopen the Delving of Four. Are there any plans around the arena in ruins in the southeastern part of the Edmores? You mean the southwestern part of the Edmores, I assume. There are. They're mostly something that On would like to do, and we have not had the time to do it. So it's probably not going to be something that you'll see in the near future. If Hunter and Burglar are coming out in 45, when is the DPS going to occur? DPS pass going to occur? A lot of that is happening right now, and a lot of that will be moving forward as we get closer to the release. We need a hobby event alongside the crafting events. I agree, and who knows? Maybe that'll happen. I just want to give a shout out to MVP, who did an absolutely fantastic job on the summer event. I played it. It's a lot of fun. It's a welcome distraction from the normal game, and it's really enjoyable, and it's great, and I think he did a fantastic job on it. Let's see. Any updates to the engine or client coming? There are always updates there, and they're not always things that we talk about very openly. There are other priorities across the studio that require more attention right now that we will eventually get to. The client and the server are constantly being looked at and adjusted and made better, we hope, over time. So that's one of the things that it's difficult to really go into details. I'm not an engineer. I only manipulate the code. I don't really write the code. I don't want to write the code. My brain is not big enough for that. Let's see. The more updates, the longer I'll take this update. The drag. Okay, I'm still looking. What about that super secret thing that I'm working on? That super secret thing. There's a lot of super secret things. Let's see. Anything. So the sound stuff is not me, but we can certainly pass those bugs along. Sure, I can give you a super quick rundown of things coming up in the next few months. So yes, we have update 45 coming, which is going to focus on the Burglar and the Hunter updates, some changes to the birding system, some new rewards, and a lot of PvMP updates that are going to be happening on the Edmores. Later on in the year, we do have a planned expansion pack that we'll start talking about soon, And I just want to let everybody know that, yes, again, the letter to the players will be coming out either tomorrow or sometime early next week. So all of that is coming out soon. The letter to the players is going to give you a much better understanding of where we are, where we're going, and what the future holds all the way up through Q1 of 2026. We've been able to maintain this pace. I'm going to do my best to keep it up because it is a daunting pace to continuously roll out these letters to the players every 3 months. But it seems like we're actually in a good cadence now, and I'm hoping that we can continue to provide as much detail and as much clarity and as much openness as we actually can to you, because we know that you enjoy it. And to be fair, we really enjoy conversing and having discussions with all of you. I mean, this is kind of why Matt and I typically do the Cave Troll discussions. Is one, we just like to hear each other talk, but also because it's great to actually have a conversation and a back and forth with you, even though you're not in the room with us, right? I can't unmute your main Twitch cam. No, I'm sorry. That's not on me. Let's see. My last question is, what is the planned level stop? Currently, we're at 150. There's no way easy for us to PvP out. So right now, I can't say where we're ever going to stop the level bans. Right now, we are planning on increasing the level again with the new expansion. That's something that we already have detailed, and it's still in the works. You will be going to 160 with the new expansion. So I don't have a direct answer for that right now. Are there any plans to make it so all mounts are account wide, as older returning players from a free-to-play have a lot of the characters were non-deleted? I don't think we have any plans to make all of the accounts, all the mounts account wide. That is a relatively difficult... It's relatively difficult for us to make something that was initially for a server world or a character into something that can go across the entire account. Sadly. With the new will the new landscape cadence be sped back up again? I am not tipping our hand on what will happen in 2026. I know the plan, and it's not just to stay in the same area, but we will be using some of that same area in 2026. Fifth profession slot unlocked being considered at all. Potentially, not necessarily directly. There are some considerations right now for an expansion or extension or revision of the crafting system, considering how we weren't able to do what we wanted to do with the crafting system before. Now that we have another engineer back who is more intimate with the deeper portions of the code, it might be something that we can go back to and look at. So there is something that we're kind of looking at there. Can you touch on why there's no catch-up or alt-friendliness with the virtue system? I need to be careful of how I phrase this. There are changes that are coming, specifically with this release. So one of the things that you're going to see, or that you probably have seen if you've been on our Bull Roarer, is the addition of the tracery upgrade scrolls. Those tracery upgrade scrolls can be used to take your traceries, any tracery that you don't currently have slotted, from one tier to the next. So you can take it from rare to incomparable to legendary, so on and so forth. That is using our Ember system. One of the things that we're trying to look at is how viable it would be to start utilizing the Ember system in a way, or I should say the Ember economy in a way that is palatable to you as players, and also continues to keep us, frankly, in business, right? Because we have to be able to make money in order to sustain the game. So one of the things that we're looking at is how can we do that? How can we alleviate some of the difficulties that we have? The discussion around virtues is something that happens a lot. Like, it's not something that we have given up on. It's not something that you should think we don't care about. We do. We care about it very deeply. You've probably noticed over the course of the past year and a half, with the inclusion of the reputation system that we introduced with Legacy of Morgoth, that reputation was made a little easier for your alts, right? For any character that comes in. We still have on our big whiteboard, not behind me, right? Because I'm in my office in my basement, but we do have on our whiteboard, like our virtual whiteboard, the level downscaling that we still would like to get to. It's not something that's happening in the near future, but it's something that we're actually looking forward to working on and getting out there for you at some point in the future. Gavin, I mentioned that, but I'll get back to that question in a second. I'm jumping around. This is my ADHD kicking in. So the virtue system and alts and how that all interacts with one another is something that we understand and we're looking at, and we're trying to come up with ways that make sense. And if I were to be direct, I would say it will be something that is mentioned in a letter to the players later this year as to one of the avenues that we're thinking about for the early portions or mid portions of 2026. Are there plans to, this was the question from Gavanth, are there plans to discourage tagging, zerging, and PvP, distribute glory based on the damage? I think it was about 15 minutes ago that I mentioned this. Yes, we're currently looking at that. That's one of the things that we're actually trying to figure out how we can do. Selling virtue packs on the store, it's something that is under consideration, but I think there's a better solution. We also think there's a better solution, and it's something that we want to look at as more of an in-game way to do it rather than something that you feel you are forced to do through the store. So we're looking at many different ways. That doesn't mean that it won't happen that way. It just means that there are other things that we're looking at. I can take a look at that. The favorite standing not being in the game data, I can take a look to see if that's something that just slipped through or got removed at some point. Kinship upgrades. The letter to the players will have an important note on things that are going on there. 2026 will have a lot more kinship updates in it than we currently have, because a lot of the back end needed to be redone in order for us to build forward build the kinships out moving forward. Please create a pack in the store for PvM players to catch up in the game faster. There's probably going to be something around that when the Sorceress is ready to go out, because the Sorceress will need some kind of a catch-up mechanic in order to be able to be viable sooner rather than later. How much time and work has gone into Lalia's? How much time and work is it going to be to get Lalia's market to up to date, selling us better cosmetics that are not already found in game? Or like that's something that will be ongoing. It's not something that will be. It's not something that we've got direct plans for. But yes, it is something that we want to look at moving forward. We are at time, but I'm going to keep going for a couple more minutes here. Are all raid buffs going to be available to barter on release? No, the only raid buff that we're actually putting in there right now is the Tomes of Defense. If that's something that ends up being really popular or something that we see is starting to drive the Ember economy, then there's a chance that we'll expand it moving forward. We're trying to do these things, as I said earlier, right, incrementally. We want to take the proper steps and assess what kind of impact it's having on the game, on the way you're playing, and not kind of inundate you and overwhelm you or overwhelm ourselves with the changes that we're making. We really want to take the time to assess what the impact is before we make deeper decisions like that and have to either take them away or change them in ways that would be viewed as negative. Any idea about allowing us to buy the quest pack while being VIP, able to buy without having... Okay. Any idea... Billy Ostrich, I'm trying to figure out your question. Any ideas... Oh, goodness. Any ideas about allowing us to buy the quest packs or things we get while being VIP, able to buy for the account without having to wait VIP? I don't understand the question. If somebody else can break that down for me and put it back in, I'll try to answer it. I'm not quite sure what you're asking. Any chances on bringing back the specific PvP cosmetic that I don't have the name for? There's always a chance that we're going to bring back more of the cosmetics. In fact, for the player cosmetics, as part of U45 in the Ettenmoors, we've brought back 3 of the 3 different cosmetic sets that are available on the light, heavy, and medium barters out there in Gleanvrig. Let's see. Any new barter? Yeah, there you go. Barter items for MP. Yes, the Tome of Defense, and Morale Scrolls are actually out at the outpost now for commendations for both players and monster players. But you have to control an outpost, and you have to use either Marta, which is the new MP monster play currency that you can get by either playing, capturing the towers, and holding them long enough to loot the chests, or by engaging with the monster play reward track. So you can use that, you can use commendations, or you can use Mithril at those locations to get the Tome of Defense, Morale Scrolls, Damage Scrolls, things like that that are currently only available on the store. See, quick question. If you could be any animal, what would it be? I would be a Wolverine, because they're angry. And I miss my anger. I don't have it anymore. If someone is VIP, they can't buy any quest packs that are included in VIP if they haven't permanently unlocked. Okay. That's something I can bring up potentially with our marketing folks. I'll look into it. I'm not sure what the viability of that is. Any chance older patron coffers will... Yes, patron coffers will return over time. It's just a matter of when we actually get them out there. And I have reached the end of questions. Woohoo! I hope that everybody enjoyed this one. I know I enjoyed sitting here and having a chat with all of you. I apologize for the numerous cough breaks that I have to take, because unfortunately that's just my life now. But we are really looking forward to everything that's in Update 45. We are really looking forward to you seeing the everything that's going to be in Update 46. I'll never feel better from this. I feel great. I feel fantastic. There's no doubt I feel great. This is just a persistent issue that I deal with from now on. It's not a big deal. The thing is, like, this is a lot of fun for us, right? We enjoy doing this so much. We really hope that you continue to enjoy the game that we're presenting to you, and we're looking forward to the next 20 years at this point. So until next time, when Matt Scenario will be back, this has been, I am the Cave Troll. So we'll see you in about a month. Have a great one, everyone.